All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, thanks for jumping on the call today. We're going to get started right now, right at the top of the hour. It is 1 o'clock, and I wanted to say thank you for joining me. Actually, we've got a huge crowd today, probably the best attended yet of our fourth quarter workshop that we call the Lawn Care Danger Zone. And today will be the final segment, the fifth and final segment of what I think has turned out to be a really good workshop for all who've attended, from all the Be Safe certified applicators to the TKC clients as well. I think we've done a pretty good job at spelling out some of the things that you need to take care of in the final months of this year to be able to get your butts out of the lawn care danger zone in 2015. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about the sales process, and it's kind of a long presentation, and I don't want it to be long. So I'm going to cruise through it pretty quickly. I want to keep it to under an hour. We've been able to do that with most of them, most of the sessions so far. Last week's went a little bit over, and I don't want that to happen again. So I'm gonna cruise right through this one. This slide, I guess, isn't as important as it has been in recent weeks. Today's workshop is the final session of the Lawn Care in the Danger Zone workshop. If you'd like to go ahead and see the previous sessions, we've got them posted at thelawntrepreneurs.com, and I just posted last week's. I posted it this morning, actually. I was a day or so late to do that, but it's up there, and you can watch it. I'll get this one up there as well right away. We covered over the past 5 weeks the renewal, previous year analysis, pending year projections. Last week we built your marketing plan. This week we're going to talk about your sales process, and the goal is that at the conclusion of the workshop, which is today, you should have a legitimate roadmap for 2015 and how you're going to implement systems and programs to be able to grow your business and get out of that danger zone. So today, your sales process, we'll talk about how to actually finalize this whole planning procedure. And while your marketing plan is a blueprint for every lead you generate, the sales process is the actual implementation of that blueprint. So last week we built that marketing plan. This week we're going to talk about what to do as a result of that marketing plan. And you know, as it says in the description, today's successful lawn service is making sales at the point of contact, which provides for a very healthy closing rate and expedited growth. And that's what we want to focus on, increasing our closing percents and making sales closer to the time of the estimate. We'll talk about that today. The systems that are in place from the moment a lead is generated as a result of your marketing plan, that is the actual crucial part to increase your success and to grow your company. What you do as soon as you get that estimate, as soon as that lead is generated, what is the action step, and what is the systems that happen after that? It's not just a one-touch process. You know, it's certainly multiple steps along the way. And I don't know how many of you have an actual sales process in place where it's well defined and spelled out. As much as I'd like to think a lot of you have, I know that most of you don't, and hopefully we'll be able to help you implement what that process is at the conclusion of today. So I wanted to, as usual, before we get started on today's topic, just review the previous 4 sessions. And because today is the final session of the fourth quarter workshop, and it looks like it's our most well attended too, I know that many of you have missed the previous one. So the first week we talked about the renewal and how that's the final chance to engage with your customers and as a mechanism to commit to using your service to next year. But the ultimate goal is to drive cash that you're going to put into the off-season overhead and also put into your marketing program. And it's a 3-phase implementation. You've missed one phase if you're just watching this now. The first phase is to get a renewal in your customers' hands with the final visit to their home of the season. The other 2 phases revolve around sending something by email and sending something by the end of the year as well. There has to be simple vehicles for action, and it needs to revolve around offers, call to action, and deadlines. The next week we talked about how to analyze your existing business and how important it is to know your numbers, and how your business revolves around 4 key segments: your product and service, operations, marketing, and finance. And segments 2, 3, and 4 are by far the most important parts of your business, while most of you focus on segment 1. The second, third, and fourth phases, the operations, marketing, and finance, are 90% of your business, while the service part of it, even though it's what you do, it's your product, it really should not get as much attention as the other four, and I know other three, and I know that kind of flies in the face of logic, but it's true. So when we analyze what we've done the previous year, our goal is to simplify and to take out some of the pain in the neck things. And it's very important that we're quantifying, articulating what those statistics are so that we're able to analyze those things and then simplify them. Based on those that analysis and simplification, we're able to project what we're going to do next year. So we took a look at what we did in 2014, kicked the crap out of it, beat it up, threw it upside down, chucked it against the wall, and we're going to put together what's going to happen next year based on what we know we're successful at. So it's all about improving on what we did the previous year. And in order to do that, we need to know what actually happened so that we can analyze that data and understand the numbers. This is a process that takes several weeks, and we need to put together legitimate projections that are kind of stretch goals. And it's not something that you do over the course of sitting down once. Again, that's why this is a 5-week program, and we're at the conclusion of it. Your marketing plan is how you grow based on what those projections are going to be. You need to make sales to grow your business. And it's vital to differentiate between what that marketing plan is and what the sales process is. We're going to talk about the sales process today. The fastest and most efficient way to become one of the big guys is to act like the big guys, to implement a marketing plan that looks and feels like what the big guys do. And we talked about how to build that marketing plan based on as many lead sources as we possibly could. Then we build a budget in accordance with that marketing plan. We build those lead sources in accordance with what we've come up with for our marketing budget, right? Makes sense. So here we are. What do we do next? First, we ask, are there any questions? Do you guys have any questions reviewing the previous 4 weeks? I put these slides that say questions in there so I can take a breath. There are no questions, so we will move on, right? So as I said, I want to try to get this done in less than an hour. Go ahead and ask questions as I ramble on. At the end, we'll have a question and answer segment as well, but if I'm going too fast, feel free to stop me. So at the conclusion of today's session, you should understand completely what a sales process is, and you should feel very comfortable implementing a sales process that integrates with your business. Now, every sales process, every company is going to be different, but you should be able to take the ideas and concepts that we're going to talk about today and put that directly into your very own business and integrate it specifically into what you do. Based on the marketing plan that we built as a result of last week's session, you should be ready to launch your sales campaign and blow the roof off of it. Okay, so here we are. We're at the end of the year. We've built that marketing campaign. We know what our sales process is going to be. We're almost up against Christmas and New Year's, and when we come back after that, it's time to just rock and roll. It's time to make it happen. Just because even if you're in a northern market where it's really the off season, you still want to do the best you can to get busy and make sales. So here we go, perfecting your sales process. If you're going to generate all these leads, your marketing program, your marketing sources, all of that good stuff is generating lots of leads. And if you're going to generate them, we better sell them, right? So I use this slide. I looked at this today or yesterday when I was putting together the presentation, finalizing the presentation. I remember using this slide in a presentation I did last winter about a similar sort of subject. And if you can't see it, it's two goofy guys. It's a stupid cartoon, and it says, "I appreciate your desire to buy our solution right now, sir, but according to my company's new sales process, we're only at step 5, and I cannot sell it until we're at step 12. And what a stupid cartoon. But the point is that sometimes your sales process needs to be complex. It should be complex. It shouldn't be a very simple process. It needs to have multiple steps. The funnel needs to be really wide at the top and really small at the bottom. There need to be multiple moving parts, things happening all at once. Everybody needs to know exactly what they should be doing. You certainly don't want to overlook buying signals and closing the sale. But the point that's shown in this cartoon is it's a complicated process, and there should be many moving parts that you are the master of. You need to make sure that you can implement that program and that process, no matter how complex it is. The most important number in regards to your sales process, analytic, I think is what I was trying to say, is closing percent. Closing percent is what defines and shows the success or failures of your sales process. And let's talk about what that is. I think we mentioned it in the marketing plan process last week, but let's make sure we know exactly what our closing percent is. It's the most important metric in your entire sales process. The more fluent your process is, and the more dedicated you are to that process and implementing your systems, the higher your closing percent is going to be. The higher your closing percent is, the more sales you're going to make. The more efficient your marketing becomes, the better your return on investment is. What is your closing percent? Closing percent is the number of sales you're making divided by rejects plus sales. That's closing percent. Sales divided by rejects plus sales. Does that make sense to everybody? Let's go a little bit deeper into it. The higher your closing percent is, the more ROI you're getting. Closing percent is essentially the number of customers who choose to use your service as a percent of people who have made a decision regarding a lead you've run. Now let's look at something here. It's not the number of sales in relation to every single estimate you've done. It's the number of sales in relation to those who said yes or no, meaning it's the number of sales you make related to the number of people who've made a decision. The grand total would be your disposal percent. We like to talk about closing percent because it's an indicator of your success at any snapshot in time. You can look at your closing percent for a year, for a month, for a day, for an hour. That closing percent is a snapshot of your success and how well you're doing versus what you expect to do at any given time. So let's look at these numbers a little bit more deep, just to make sure we know exactly what we're talking about here. So say you've run 1,000 estimates and you've made 100 sales. You would like to think, or it would make sense to think, that your closing percent is 10%. It's not. That would be your disposal percent. Your closing percent is not 10%. You need to determine how many people have rejected, how many people have said no, how many people have made a decision. So if you've made 100 sales on 1,000 estimates and 300 have said no, 300 have rejected, your closing percent is 25%. 400 have made a decision and 100 have signed up. So 100 of those 400 is 25%. You still have 600 outstanding estimates. And that helps you determine how many additional sales you're going to project, right? So if you know you're closing those leads at 25%, you can really project moving forward how many more sales you're going to make. Typically, it will be a little bit less because you'll have the no decisions. You won't get every person to say yes or no, but you should. That should be your goal. You should try to result every single estimate you ever do, whether they say yes or no. At the end, you have a reject party and you reject everything, and that closing percent drops, but not by a lot. So in this case, if 400 have said yes, 400 have made a decision, 100 have signed up, you still have 600 outstanding estimates. You can generally predict that you're going to make 250 sales, right? If you run 1,000 estimates and you're closing at 25%, that's 250 sales. It's going to end up dropping to closer to 20% because at least 5% won't actually result in anything. You'll just lose track of them. Helps you to project. You should be tracking your closing percent on every single lead source, every single day, by every single salesperson, sometimes every single hour. And this number is the best indicator of success or failure in your entire sales process. So when I say by every single hour, that makes sense. Sometimes while you're working, in the call center at night and everybody's on the telephone, you always want to keep track of how many sales have made, how many rejects have put up by salesperson, by hour, and you can run certain contests or whatever, but it certainly is a huge indicator. Here's why, right? Let's take a look at closing percent in January. This is made up. if at the end of the month, Dick's closing at 21%, Scott's closing at 19%, Jeff's closing at 5%, Tim's closing at 28%, that's pretty telling. And as a manager here, what are we going to do? I won't ask you. I'll tell you, but I think you know most of the time what the answer is going to be here. We need to look pretty closely at what Jeff's doing. If Jeff's closing at 5%, there's a couple of things that could be going wrong here. He might be rejecting too quickly. Last week we talked about the difference between no and no, not right now. You want to nurture your leads as long as you can. He just might not give a crap. He might be just firing them off. You know, if somebody doesn't answer the phone, he might reject them. At the very least, this tells you need to look at Jeff's activities and figure out what the heck's going on. He just might be a terrible salesperson. He might not be, making calls. You know, it's a reason to look into what's going on. Everybody else, Tim's doing really good. Tim, on the other hand, is very high, so he might not be rejecting things that should be rejected. It's just certainly an indicator of what's going on in your office, in your sales campaign at all times. And it's something you need to track all the time. I'm beating a dead horse here, but the closing percent is absolutely the most important indicator of your sales process. Okay? Any questions? So let's move on to the old who, what, why, where, when, and how routine of your sales process. So we kind of identify the most important parts of what this process is. Again, I want to remind you guys that when we're talking about the sales process, we're not talking about our marketing. Marketing generates leads. Sales makes sales. Sales develops new customers. Marketing brings them to the table. Salespeople, you close them. Who? You need to answer all these questions. These are questions that you need to ask yourself and you need to have answers to. Very clear answers, not wishy-washy answers, not, yeah, I don't know, I'll figure it out later. You need to answer these questions now. Okay? Who is making the sales? Who is the salesperson? Who are the salespeople? Drill down to specifically who they are. Right? Sounds silly. But who is going to make the sales? Who's going to run the leads? Is it the same person who makes the sales? Who's going to send out the estimates? Who's answering the telephone? Let me tell you something right now. If you guys aren't answering the telephone, if you're letting it go to voicemail, you're losing out big time. You need to answer that phone all the time. And even, I guess, even if it goes to an answering service, you know, that's okay. But please answer your telephones. You know, people come to me and say, man, I'm trying to grow my business, and I call them back, and it goes to the voicemail on a cell phone. You need to have somebody answering the telephone professionally. You know, even if you're small, you know, act like you've been there before. Who's going to answer the emails when estimate requests come in? Who's taking care of it? Make sure all of these who questions are defined. Is it all the same person? Is it a group of salespeople? Is it an office manager? Is there a sales manager? Is who's doing what? Each estimate must be assigned to an individual person. So if you're running a big sales campaign or bigger than just one person, each estimate must literally be assigned to an individual so that you don't have double follow-up, so that everybody, you also don't have any excuses. Everybody knows exactly what to do. What are we doing? So here's a line that we used to use back in the Lawn Dog days to our managers, and we'd say, stop at least 3 times during the course of the day and ask yourself this question. Is what I'm doing right now at this exact moment helping me to reach my sales goal for the day, the week, the month, and the year? And if the answer is no, change what you're doing. In the off season or during your sales process season, which is from now or January 1st until the conclusion of that campaign. It's different at different parts of the country. Our sales campaign used to run really until June 1st at Lawn Dog. That would be the end of it. Really is going to kind of slow down as you begin to start production. But you have to ask yourself over the course of the day a couple times, is what I'm doing at this exact moment helping me to reach my sales goal for the day, week, the month, and the year? And if the answer is no, do something different. In other words, if you want to go through this entire process, build a marketing plan, implement the sales process, and make a real commitment to growing your business, you need to be obsessed with it. And if you're not obsessed with it, you're not going to hit your goals. When? Question. What are your hours? When do you work? Real question. So what are your hours this time of year? Actually, don't answer it. But most of you who aren't on the road, who aren't in the South, say, yeah, this time of year, if I'm not plowing, if there's no snow, 9 to 3, something like that. If you're going to make a commitment to growing this business and you're going to implement a full sales campaign, you aren't going to work 9 to 3. You have to legitimately change your hours. Unless you're just going to oversee it in management, you've got salespeople who are going to do it for you, which isn't a bad thing either. Sometimes it's a good thing to pull yourself out of it. If you've got a mid-level sales campaign and you've got a sales manager, it makes sense for you to not be there all the time. Trust the people that you've chosen to implement some of these systems. So it needs to be second shift. You need to be on the telephone. You need to be generating leads and calling them, right? So remember back when we talked about we want to grow like the big guys, we have to act like the big guys. Those big guys are on the telephone. Those salespeople are working. So 11 to 7 or even 12 to 8 are the hours that you should be working, beginning January 1st, second week of January, all the way through when you begin production or into June. For the salespeople, all the way through June 1st. Second shift. If I'm sounding like a hard ass a little bit, because I know nobody wants to do that, it's all about your commitment to growing the business. And if you don't want to make that commitment, either find somebody who can do it and you can implement, you can produce the processes, set the goals, allow it to happen, and find somebody else to do it. But that's the only way it's going to work. So where? The where part of this. It's not a stupid question. How many of you guys are saying, yeah, I can work at home at night. It won't be a problem. I'll just keep the door shut. I'll hit the phone that way. Nope, you don't work at home. It never works. During your sales process or to the point of the level of commitment that you need to make to grow your business, when you say something like this, that you can work at home, keep the door shut, and hit the phone, that's not a good idea. I guess if it's a last resort, it's something you have to do, go ahead and do it. But your sales campaign should run in an office at a location where you have employees in a professional atmosphere. I know I could never work at home at night on the telephone. If you live by yourself, maybe it's a different story. Well, I guess if you live by yourself with no television or internet, it might be a different story. But my strong suggestion is that you work in an office setting, even at night. Why? Why are we going to do this? Why are we going to make all these sacrifices? Why are we going to act like the big guys? And it's rhetoric and hyperbole perhaps, but it's because it's your obsession. It's what you want to do. You want to grow your business, you have to become obsessed with it. If you want to grow your business to the point of total gratification and satisfaction, you need to implement these processes. If you want to get to that $5 million range so that you can sell your business to TrueGreen and so you can retire, that's why. If you want to grow your business so that you can hand it down to your kids and create a true family business, that's why. Most of the time, it's just because you want to be successful. You want to be good at what you do. You want to be able to compete with other people and companies in your market, and they're doing this. Trust me, the companies that are growing are doing this kind of system. And I guess finally, the question is, why not? How? Here's the complicated part. How does this sales process work? Any questions? I'm cruising, which is good. We'll get this done less than an hour. Does anybody want to ask any questions? All right. What are the couple questions just popped up. Hey, Jeremy, what's up with you? I'm glad you made it. Okay, so the sales process, the nuts and bolts of what happens. The marketing plan generates the leads, and I should have opened our worksheet with all of our sources, all of our marketing plan flowed out January through June, the cost associated with them, all that planning that we did last week. The next step is to trust our systems. The next step is to make sure that we actually implement those lead sources, that we follow the plan, we don't complicate it, we've spelled it out, we implement it, and make it happen. But what happens when we generate a lead? That marketing plan that we built is now is strategically being executed from whatever stage it's in, whether it's direct mail, reject calling, all of those sources we talked about. What happens when we generate a lead? Well, there's a couple things that go into your system once that lead is generated. So now, remember the bridge we talked about last week, building a bridge between sales and marketing? We're on the other side of the bridge. There's quote delivery, and then there's quote follow-up. This is your system. This is the nuts and the bolts of your marketing systems, delivery and follow-up. It's funny, when I was searching for estimate forms, old school estimate form, I found this True Green Chemlon estimate form, and we'll get to that. So there's three types of quote delivery, three types of vehicles to get estimates in your customer's hands. 1, instant; 2, responsive; 3, old school. And just because, don't let the language fool you, these are 3 legitimate ways that you need to get estimates into your customer's hands. I'm not saying to abandon any of them. Then when we talk about follow-up, there's 2 types of follow-up. There's personal follow-up, and then there's nurturing of that lead. Sort of nurturing meaning automated follow-up. So let's go ahead and talk about what happens when we get an estimate. How do we deliver it? How do we get it in our customers' hands? The instant quote, the do-it-yourself estimate. I know, actually, I was looking at the attendees. A bunch of you guys were at B-Safe training 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago this Friday. And we talked about this a little bit. And it's the way the one-step sale, the way the world is changing, the way people want information. It's information on demand. It's not necessarily the way it used to be, where you'd get a request for estimate, the old school way, which we'll talk about when we're done with this, but the instant quote delivery on demand. So let's go ahead and look at, let's use B-Safe as an example here. So the B-Safe consumer lead generation site, part of our marketing plan is to drive people to this landing page. This is a very simple website. It's not a complex website. It's all designed for list building and lead generation. So our sources of marketing, whether they're electronic or any other way, are trying to drive people to this landing page where they can fill out this form. And we'll get to that segment in a minute. However, the estimate on demand, or the one-step or zero-step sale, is becoming more and more popular. If you look at both True Green and Scott's, their website, they've implemented ways for customers to go to their website, get an estimate, and sign up immediately. Well, we need to keep up with them. We're talking about acting like the big guy. We need to make sure that we're implementing systems that help us keep up, and in some cases even go beyond that, right? So let's go ahead and see how this works. We drive people to our site. They can either submit their information to get an estimate, or they can get an instant quote using the satellite estimating tool. What's a good address? Somebody want to give me an address? I don't know. I think this is a good one. 3051, I think. So I live at 2 Ranges Road, Hudson, New Hampshire. I just put it in there. It's going to bring me to this, and it's going to capture this information for you, which is important. List building above and beyond anything is the most important thing. It's going to bring them to a satellite version of their property. It says when you have current measurement defined, click add measurement to total. Continue this process until all parts of property have been measured. I know that this is my house. This is a huge lawn here. And very carefully, or not so carefully, we measure our property. 23,000 square feet. We add that. All done. Let's continue. We've done an estimate in the middle of the night. We've got a price for our lawn. This is the BeSafe program, the BeSafe Premium Organic program. It's been quoted immediately, quoted instantly, and the customer has the opportunity to buy right then. Okay, so that's a real example of how you can automate your process to get ahead. So the goal is to drive people to that site, give them the opportunity to do their own estimate. In the process, what you've done, if you've captured a lead, they can actually sign up right here. They can go as far as prepay if they want. But if they don't, things are triggered so that you're getting information saying that somebody has generated a lead. You've captured their information. You can follow up with them after. This is the instant or zero-step sale. I don't think this is going to be your most popular method of making sales, but I think it sure is a great opportunity to keep up with some of the bigger companies. It's all about data, and you're gathering data all the time, right? That's important. That's the do-it-yourself estimate. Any questions on that? How about the responsive quote delivery? This is probably the most common form of getting estimates in a customer's hand. The zero-step or instant method, I think, is probably gaining in popularity. More and more people don't necessarily want to talk to a salesperson. You've heard me say this over and over again. The days of in lawn care having the contractor come out, sit down, and have a cup of coffee and talk about what they're going to do are gone, out the window. Those days are gone. It's all about speed and information. And so while that instant quote is important to have there, the responsive quote is probably going to be the most common. Now, in our case here, we email the quotes based, again, using that same program. We email quotes. You know what? I think I already opened this up here. I did. This is our dashboard. Say somebody, as a result of your marketing sources, you get a request for an estimate on the telephone. Somebody calls and wants you to get them an estimate. Say it's a referral. It could be from door hanging. It could be whatever. The phone rings. You need to get an estimate. You want to be responsive as quick as you possibly can. And one way to do it is by using this, by generating, creating quotes right online. So you take the customer's information. You can actually make small talk with them. The goal would be to sell this, make this sale immediately while you're actually on the telephone with them. You can get it in the customer's hands while you still have them on the telephone. I want to measure it. What was I think I used what did I do? 2 Rangers Road. 2 Rangers Road, Hudson, New Hampshire. Same deal goes on this side of things, brings us to the satellite picture of the home. You know, if I've got the customer on the line, I can say, you know what, are you the house right on the corner of Rangers and Barrett's Hill with the pool in the back? Oh, yeah, I see that. Gotcha. Wow, you got a big lawn, lady. Looks nice, though. Looks like it's treated. Looks like somebody's doing something. We get that. I was a little bit quicker that time. We just choose the programs that we want. So what'd you do with your lawn last year? Oh, you did it yourself? Oh, well, we could be competitive with that. Yeah, did you have any weeds? Crabgrass was an issue, right? Yeah, we had some issues with crabgrass too, but we were able to take advantage our take advantage of free service calls. So lots of our, we had some breakthrough with crabgrass, and but we were able to take care of it. Tom is walking and chewing gum at the same time here. Bang! We get the estimate in their email right away. Okay, so the responsive estimate is a way to get that directly to them immediately. I won't bother going through opening it. You get that estimate in the email right away. The point is that you can get that. Speed is important in closing percents. Your closing percent is going to skyrocket if you can get the estimate in the customer's hands immediately. Right? The faster you get it done, the more sales you're going to make. The higher your closing percent is, the bigger your ROI, the more successful you're going to be. Finally, the last option for getting a quote in a customer's hand is the old school way, and that's not something that needs to go away completely. The old lawn inspection report. How many of you guys are still doing the old lawn inspection report? You have to have an option for it. So, when you get a call for an estimate, you want to ask if you can send it to them by email. And if they say, no, I'd like you to come out and take a look at the lawn, well, that's what you have to do. One thing that you don't ever want to do, and we spoke to several companies this spring or late winter, because it was a late winter that went into March and April, were sitting on estimates. They were getting estimate requests and not doing them because there was snow or ice or something like that out on the properties. Your estimates should revolve around square footage and not necessarily condition, right? So especially when we're talking about fertilization. That estimate, that price quote is regardless of the condition of the lawn, unless it's in, you've got a lawn that's in terrible shape, but the homeowners are going to tell you that. We're looking to do volume estimating, not quality. You want to make sure you've got the right square footage as it corresponds to your price list, but we want volume. Don't ever sit on an estimate. So some of these estimates or quotes are going to want you to come out and do an analysis and an inspection. You want to cut down on those as much as you possibly can. The old school quote delivery. I can still, in my head, think about the old barefoot grass estimate where we'd run 50, 60 estimates a day and have to write out on them, thank you for considering barefoot grass. Our custom granular products are designed to improve your lawn, blah, 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 blah. You'd write the same paragraph over and over and over. Check off bluegrass, ryegrass, fescue, check off crabgrass, check off clover, dandelion, things that are on there. And it was really not of any value to anybody, but other than just trying to get some sort of fake analysis in the customer's hands, and then we'd go back and sell them, as a number. But many people still want you to do that. And if they request that, you have to do it. However, as part of your sales process, you want to minimize those as much as you possibly can. Either get them done instantly or get them done, right away using the quoting system where you can email the estimate to the homeowner. Build that data. The more data you have, the more square footage you have from year after year after year, the more lead sources you're able to accumulate. So every estimate you do this year and you've got the square footage on, then become a lead source the following year. So not everybody's going to sign up, right? You're going to have rejects. If you're closing, your estimates at 25%, you do 1,000 estimates. That's an awful lot of estimates that don't buy. Those are now sources for the following year. So the more data you build, the better off you are. Get it? Any questions? Minimize these old school ones. Your closing rate will increase drastically the more you minimize those lawn dog and those inspect. In my head, I just said lawn dog inspection report. Our estimate form was called the LDIR. So now let's talk about follow-up. How do we follow up on each one of those estimates? So we always want to close the sale at the time of the estimate. That's our goal. We want to make sales at the point of request. We want to get that information in our customers' hands as quick as we possibly can and do everything we can to wrap that up. We want to keep them on the telephone. If we don't have them on the telephone, we want to follow up right away. We want to be able to sell at the point of estimation. But that's not always going to work out. most sales are going to require follow-up. I don't know how many times I've seen companies go through all this work, do all these estimates, get all these lead sources in place, generate all these leads, run all these leads, and then don't follow up on them. And that's terrible, absolutely terrible. The more you follow up, the more sales you're going to make. And as much as you hate it, most of this follow-up is going to take place on the telephone. I know people don't answer their telephones the way they used to. In fact, my telephone rings, and I'm not necessarily even I'm getting off the couch sometimes when my home phone rings. But people tend to give you cell phones. This, the whole cell phone thing helps you be able to have more calling hours during the day, not just at night. But you have to follow up by the telephone, no matter how you slice it. Following up by the telephone is the best way to make the most amount of sales and increase your closing percent a lot. So when I used to do sales training for Lawn Dog and for other companies, I had what I called the C3PO program. And, it's sort of old-fashioned features and benefits selling, which is okay when it comes to lawn care. And C3PO is a system that revolves around 5 specific sort of concepts. Get it? C, 1, 2, 3, P's, O, C3PO. Yeah, fancy. So once you know what the C3PO is all about, you're able to kind of develop your system around it. And the first one is confidence. You have to be able to know your stuff. You need to be able to speak confidently about your program. Your salespeople too. When I say you, I'm talking about any member of your sales team, anybody who's involved in this sales process. Confidence is important. If you're squeamish and you're following up and you're not showing some excitement, you're not into what you're doing, you're not going to make a lot of sales. You need to know what you're talking about, and confidence revolves around education. Quality of job, everything else. There's so much that goes into that. Persistence. Call every 3 days. Set appointments and keep promises. As long as you ask if you can call back in 3 days, you're more than welcome to, right? You don't want to hound somebody. You don't want to bother them. But if you do an estimate on a Monday and you talk to them on Monday, you say, hey, is it all right if I call you back on Thursday? Yeah, sure. You call on Thursday. They say, no, man, I really haven't looked at that. It's January. Why are you trying to sell me lawn care in January for? I know it's January, but it's what we do. Would you mind if I gave you a call back on Tuesday? Yeah, sure, no problem. Call back on Tuesday. You know what? I really still haven't even looked at that. Why don't you try me again? That process sometimes lasts up to 8 weeks, all January, February, into March. By the time you get to March, as long as you've been persistent, that potential customer now knows you. Trust me, they're going to know you. And as long as you're polite, right? As long as you're polite, Mr. and Mrs., please and thank you. As long as you're polite and persistent when it's time to buy, you're going to be top of mind. Personal. You've developed a relationship with that customer because you've been polite and because you've been persistent. You've developed a personal relationship with that customer. When it's time for that customer, a potential customer, to want to start a service, start any lawn care service, they're going to know that you were confident, persistent, and polite, and they've got a relationship with you. And oftentimes, even though you've done that estimate, 8 weeks prior to this point, you're going to close that sale. And finally, organization. You have to be organized. Without organization, you're dead in the water. You need to be operating off of a CRM. Whether it's your operational software like Service Autopilot or Real Green Lawn Assistant, you need to make sure that you're calling people when you say you're going to call, right? If you say, okay, Mr. R2D2, I'm going to call you on Thursday, you can't remember that because you're going to have so many estimates. These are essentially becoming numbers, and they're not people. I hate to say it, but that's the way it is. You're just going to when you get to that Thursday, you should have a list of calls to make. If you have to write it down on individual pieces of paper, do that too. But by following this system, being confident, persistent, polite, personal, and doing it all through a very organized process, your closing rates will be higher. The follow-up process is very, very important, right? The second part of follow-up is lead nurturing, okay? and you need to develop a system where you're kind of softly touching your potential clients over the course of a long period of time. Lead nurturing is the art of communicating with consistent and meaningful touches to viable prospects, regardless of their timing to buy. That can be all year. It should be right now. It should be, you need to be in constant contact, and that's one of the company's Constant Contact. Most of you guys, or some of you guys probably use that service, to be in touch with your potential clients all the time. There are CRMs and programs developed to do this. Some of you use Infusionsoft. HubSpot's another one. MailChimp, which is the picture here. MailChimp is just an email program that allows you to build sequences based on certain events. Autoresponders. So once we've begun our process of follow-up by telephone using a C3PO system, our autoresponders should also be set up. Whereas an email is sent every 3 to 5 days after a quote is presented. You need to build this out with the content in it well in advance of beginning to implement the system. These emails are sent based on the behavior of the recipient, so the email, once the email is sent, several things can happen thereafter. So say the email is opened. Another email is scheduled to be sent at a predetermined time. If a link in that email is clicked, that means that they're showing a little bit more interest than somebody who doesn't open the email. So you can set up a sequence so that when somebody clicks a link in that email, another email is sent at a predetermined time, so on and so forth. And it has to be interwoven with content marketing. What's content marketing? Content marketing is a marketing technique of creating and distributing relevant and valuable content to attract, acquire, and engage a clearly defined and understood target audience with the objective of driving profitable customer action. That's a fancy way of saying when you've got estimates and you've got people in your pipeline, you want to send them stuff that's interesting to them, stuff of value, things that help them feel more confident in your business. They've got an interest in what you do. A lot of times they're going to be interested in read the content that you're putting out to them. Make sense? All right, any questions? How am I doing on time? Pretty good. I'm going to finish right on time here. So let's review our funnel. The sales funnel is what it's all about here in our campaign. Our marketing department, the marketing phase of what we do, generates the lead. A lead comes in as a result of some sort of marketing. It's not sales. Some sort of marketing generates a lead. We're way up the top of the funnel. When we get that lead, we provide the quote. The sales department provides the quote. Whether it's that instant quoting, whether it's that quoting on demand, or whether it's old school quoting, that estimate needs to end up in the person who requested it as soon as possible through one of those three ways. As soon as that that quote is delivered, we need to attempt to close that sale. We want to try to close that sale at as close to the time of estimate as possible. That's the sales department. We want to close that sale at the same time that estimate is being requested. However, most of the time that's not going to happen. We need to follow up by telephone. Answer questions to schedule the next call, the 3-day rule. That's your sales system still, too. Call every 3 days or when you've been given permission to call, but always make sure that you're organized in it, and that's the C3PO. Make sure that you're confident in all, the whole process, and call every 3 days. And the fifth part of the funnel is trigger email autoresponders and content marketing, initially sales that will return to marketing. If you don't close that sale, even in this cycle, even in this year, even in this system, that person, that prospect still remains in your content marketing, in your lead nurturing. And even if the cycle takes it from springtime all the way through summer, all the way through fall, all the way through winter, all the way back to the beginning again, you still have the opportunity to make the sale. That prospect is dumped back into marketing and nurtured over even the course of an entire year through your content marketing. Got it? Any questions? Your sales process in 50 minutes. Now I know Many of you don't have this type of sales process. I know for a fact that you don't. I know that some of it is potentially a little bit overwhelming. I know most of us don't want to work second shift. I know the prospect of trying to implement a lead nurturing campaign is difficult to think about, especially if you're not set up to do it appropriately. But it's really important that you take this system and make sure you implement it on leads that have been generated as a result of your marketing. Any questions? We have reached the end. We have reached the end of the fourth quarter workshop. And if you followed along, you can get out of that lawn care danger zone. So the question is about lead nurturing. The most basic way to do it, John, is just through a system like MailChimp. MailChimp allows you to set up, I think they call it sequences. They don't call it, I forget exactly what they call it. You set up a process so that based on certain triggers, you're able to automate the process. So you send out an email after an estimate's done, and based on things that you set, and man, trust me, it's really easy. Programs like MailChimp, it's very, very simple to set up. You just need to set aside the time to do it, and it's automated. There are other programs, like I said, like Infusionsoft, which are much more expensive, but allows you to go in many other directions. You can set up sequences that go, all over the place. It's also based on lead generation. It's all automated. So somebody goes to your website, fills out a form, they're automatically sent some information. It's much more automated. HubSpot's another one, which is all about content marketing, built-in SEO. There are so many things out there. But to address a point that was brought up here, your window is small. Your window to implement these processes is small. It's not like a restaurant where you're just trying to generate business all year round. You're unable to. Your cycle, especially in the north where I'm accustomed to talking about, there's a very short period of time where potential customers are willing to buy your service. And the bigger companies, True Green, Scott's, and those guys are just pounding them all year long, so that it's hard. Very few people say, I think I'd like to find a lawn fertilization company, and they go searching for one, because most other companies, some of the big companies, are already actively chasing those people, through one way or the other. So the cycle is small. So some of those real complicated nurturing systems that you might spend $400 or $500 per month on, I don't know if that's always worth it. Especially if you're just beginning. So to answer the question, MailChimp is a great one that puts together processes and triggers to be able to automate. Any other questions? Come on, you guys. So the question is about telemarketing, cold calling. There might be a small place for telemarketing, you guys, but not a lot. In fact, when we built our lead, our marketing plan, we had a source for telemarketing, and I don't think we filled anything in there. But as a result of the federal do not call list, most people have registered to prevent telemarketing. So you can't. It's against the law to call people. I think that's about 75% of consumers are on that, but that means 25% aren't. So if you've got a list, remember we talked about the list in marketing, you certainly absolutely need to define who you're marketing to, and you need to own that list. If you suppress the federal do not call prospects, it leaves you some that you can call, and very simple light telemarketing is a way to generate leads. So while there is an opportunity for it, it's not going to be your biggest lead source. But I think it certainly can be a part of it. Jeremy, good question. It's different all over the country. So the question is, when is it a good time to start a marketing campaign? Should I start in February? Well, Jeremy's up in Maine, so he's at the opposite end, or the far end of the spectrum in regards to to when you should start. You should start mid-January. So you need to make sure, in fact, Jeremy, I don't know if you've been on these calls all along, but go back and watch some of the other ones where we talk about how to build that source, that marketing plan. And there are certain sources that you can put out there in January and February. A lot of the work that you do in January and February doesn't result in a sale right away, but when you follow that system where you nurture them along, every lead that you generate in January, for instance, in your case, you've been running your other business, your maintenance business and construction and everything else for a long time. You should have a list of people you've done business with in the past or current customers who don't happen to be on one of your core services. January is a great time to call them up and say, hey, we do other services. If you're interested in a fertilization quote, I'd like to send you one. And you'll end up doing quite a bit. You'll end up sending out quite a bit of estimates. And because they're active customers, it's okay to call them. So generate leads in January based on some of those early type source codes. Middle of January, I think, is a good time for you, Jeremy. Middle to end of January, and follow through all the way through May and June. Good question, though. It's further south now. Nothing wrong with starting now. Starting January 1st. Christmas is tough. People have other things going on, but right after the first of the year, fire it up. Okay, guys, we are at approaching 1 hour. We're at 56 minutes, so I'm going to wrap up. Thank you for attending the workshop. I've got them all posted at the website. I think what I'm going to do, we've got about 5 hours of content here, and I think I'm going to pick a day, and maybe we'll do them all in one day and have a little bit of interaction. I'll play the recordings of them all. But perhaps right after the holidays, maybe even before that. And if you can spend, I know it's tough to spend 5 hours sitting in front of a computer, but this should have been a pretty good process for you. So for those who've been on all along, and we had 168 registrants, not everybody showed up every single time, but I'm very appreciative of the time you've spent with me. I'll get some more information out to you guys, follow-up. I'll put you in my own lead nurturing campaign for some of the things that we talk about, including BeSafe and the consulting and some of the other processes we've used throughout the course of the workshop. And perhaps I can help you out in the future. But thanks for joining me. I'm going to wrap up, and I hope to talk to you soon, guys. Happy holidays.